Now I'm seeing every fall is seen as an opportunity, which, as long as the long term growth of the country is in place, once you start making money, usually you stop only when you've lost. You can't really enjoy, you can enjoy EMI filled fun, but then you have to pay for it later. In a sense, what you're doing is you're consuming tomorrow's income today.
Correct.
And there will be a tomorrow. Say if you're a little greedy, you tend to chase after that extra returns, and somewhere or the other it comes back to bite you. People have a lot of behavior biases. And my biggest takeaway is that investing is not about finance, investing is all about behavior. The greatest gift a person can have is knowing how to stop loss. How to cut your losses at the right time
Right.
is the toughest and the best skill that you have.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask Incred. Joining us today to unpack the fast evolving world of digital wealth tech is Vijay Kuppa. He's the CEO of Incred Money and on a mission to help Indians diversify their investments beyond just stocks and mutual funds, and all at the click of a button. With years of experience across investment advisory, product innovation, and fintech, Vijay blends deep domain knowledge with a sharp instinct for what tomorrow's investors need today. A frequent speaker at fintech forums and a believer in tech with purpose, he's helping shape the future of financial well being, one investor at a time. Hi, Vijay, and welcome to Ask Incred.
Thank you for having me here.
Great. So, in this episode, we are looking at diving into the retail wealth tech space and understanding how, the investment behavior of retail investors has changed over the years in India. And in fact, I was looking at some numbers and it seems like retail participation surged more than 10 times in the last 10 years. And it's hit, I think, 10 crores in August 2024. And the next 1 crore was added in literally just 5 months, right? So I think when we look at equity participation, I think that's really surged. So I just wanted to kind of ask you, how do you perceive this entire shift in the retail investment space? And do you think that, there's a big mindset change in retail investors in the recent years?
So the big change over the last 10 years has been the financialization of savings. That's a mega trend that we are seeing in India. And it started after Modi 1 first came into power. Until then, we were seeing that DIs used to be sellers and FIs used to be buyers.
Right.
But that whole trend started, around 2015, about 10 years back. In fact, if you look at asset allocation of what investors used to hold, it used to be dominated by physical assets. So real estate, gold, and to some extent fixed deposits. But today, the way stock market has played a part in portfolios, I think has been fantastic. As you said, if you look at the numbers, look at the monthly SIP book. It's 25,000 crores of investments every month.
Wow.
And, close to 10 crore, individuals have invested. So all this points to a massive change in mindset. But with this latest trend, I think they're a lot more comfortable with managing volatility because they feel that if they invest in these assets, it's more like connecting to the long-term India growth story. And if India grows, your returns also will tend to grow. So I think that's main change that we are seeing from investors.
And how do you perceive their comfort levels with doing everything today on a tech platform versus face to face? I think that's also been a big change, right, that
Right.
we've seen in recent years.
Right. So I think tech has played a very large role, starting with KYC. Earlier, KYC used to involve loads and loads of paperwork. Now that's become digital. So a major entry barrier has reduced. Payment systems have improved, and you can do large transactions online, fully digital. I think these two were the major drivers. The third, I think, has been the government's push towards inclusion, the government's push towards usage of more instruments like reducing the ticket sizes, for example, regulations that promote retail investors to come in, the whole concept of automating your NACH mandates or SIP. I think all of these have contributed overall to that growth. And a platform like ours, for example, is just a conduit that helps these investors take that call easily. And it's not just in investments. I think people are more comfortable paying online for using UPI. So that comfort also transcends into their wealth management.
Correct. But there's also this risk involved, right? I think there are so many platforms today out there. Of course, in the beginning, I think Zerodha kind of led this whole change and approach towards broking online, and it started with that. But how do investors kind of separate out the trustworthy platforms from the many that are out there?
Right. So first thing I think is to see that you're licensed. If you're a
Hmm.
regulated, licensed entity, it builds a lot of trust.
Right.
So that's there.
That's one tip
That's
for
the, that's
investors.
for the investors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second, I think in the recent past we're hearing a lot of fake apps coming into picture, but that is more of fraud. I think. You just have to be conscious as an investor that you click on the right links, you download the right app.
Hmm.
Even SEBI, RBI have taken cognizance of this, so they're
Right.
trying to create like a verified by regulator kind of a thing in this market.
Right.
But in terms of trust and ease, one of the cons of making it so easy is that it's also very easy to lose money in this
Yeah.
market. Earlier, getting in used to be tough. Now it's so easy. One of the challenges, over trading, for example,
Correct.
just makes it so easy to lose money if you're not conscious. So,
Correct.
but having said, overall, I think it's a great boost that technology has brought in and got a lot of investors into the financial
Yeah.
domain.
But in fact, to your point, when you mentioned cons, and I think that's one of the areas, right, where one tends to feel that a lot of these investors who've come in maybe in the last 10 years, they're doing a lot of tactical play, right? And what would you say about, kind of taking a more financial planning led approach to wealth creation? And would you have any, comments on that for the retail investors who are watching this?
Right. So, see, every investor knows what kind of a profile he has. So, I think the first thing that every investor should do is understand what his risk profile and risk appetite is.
Right.
That do you have the propensity to, deal with volatility or lose a lot of money? Sometimes the market may not be in your favor. Do you have the ability to hold on during such moments? I think understanding yourself is the first step. The second is, I classify it based on the kind of time that you have. If you're an investor who doesn't have too much time, hand it over to a professional.
Yeah.
You could do it via mutual funds where there's a professional fund manager, or you could take the help of an advisor. However, if you do have the time, then you should invest a little bit into reading about the markets, having that sense of knowledge. See, it's not important that you time it perfectly, but broadly, if you get the direction right,
Hmm.
and if you come in when retail should always be, I say, counter-cyclical. So when markets are falling, you should look to capture that opportunity. You don't have to get it perfectly, but when you do that little bit, it adds a little alpha to your portfolio.
Right. Which is so much but easier said than done for
Yeah, I
most
know.
of us, right?
Yeah.
Great. But I think that's where I think financial literacy education and I think platforms like Incred Money are
Right.
hopefully
That's
like kind of sending out the right messages at the right time. Um, in terms of alternatives, if you just talk about that, right? So I think the surge in equities and there's a lot more kind of comfort most retail investors have with equities. How would you compare investments in fixed income as against equities today? What kind of, what's the AUM size saying and what is the financial literacy around it?
right. So fixed income plays a very important role in any user's portfolio. It's very important to diversify. So fixed income, what all can it do? First, it's like the balancer. When equity is an aggressive portion of your portfolio,
Hmm.
fixed income provides that calming impact. Second, it helps in capital preservation. And third, it also helps you generate some returns if you want some income. Like, for example, if you talk about retirees,
Hmm.
they need an income, steady income post retirement. So fixed income plays that role. However, one of the biggest cons of fixed income is that it post tax returns most of the time don't beat inflation. And that's something that retail investors don't get. So, one of the most common myths that people think is that FD is the best investment. FD actually happens to be the safest investment. But if you take on a post tax basis, you end up being negative in returns. You can think of some of the other interesting fixed income alternatives other than fixed deposits. You can think of bonds, for example. So, bonds give you an extra kicker of returns without taking too much extra risk. There's an interesting product in Incred Money called market linked debentures, where you can also see that maybe you will end up getting a little extra returns without having erosion of principal. So there are different instruments out there that users can, use to optimize on their fixed income returns. Globally, fixed income is a much larger market than equity. But in India, it's less than 1/10 of that size.
Oh my
So to
God.
give you that sense, because if fixed income has always been FD, so if you think of
Right.
FD market, it's massive. But if you think
Mhm.
of market in fixed income outside FD, it's quite small today.
Wow. So that's a lot of catching up
That's
to
a
do
lot of catching
there.
up to do.
Right. And in terms of the return profile, like what would it be like compared to an FD? Like if you were just to talk about.
Your fixed deposits typically operate in that 6 to 8% range.
Hmm.
If you do small finance banks with fixed deposits, they can give you up to 9%. And corporate bonds typically A and below go from about 10 to 12% returns. So that's a good, nice kicker. And even post tax basis, you can end up getting better returns if you're if you are looking for fixed income as an instrument.
That's very interesting. So, what role do you think it should play in Indian portfolios today? Like, if you just talk about it in terms of asset allocation, would you have like a ideal kind of portfolio mix that you would suggest for, say, a balanced investor?
Right. So it depends on broadly your age and your risk profile. So
Hmm.
if you take somebody in their 20s, starting off their career, have a long way to earn, they can have a lot more in equity. So broadly, any portfolio should have these four elements: one, equity; second, fixed income;
Hmm.
third, gold; and fourth, alternates.
Got it.
The percentage between each of these depends on the circumstance that the investor is in. So somebody in their early 20s should have at least 60 to 70% equity, maybe about 10% in fixed income,
Hmm.
about 10% in gold,
Hmm.
and another 10% to 15% in alternates. But if you talk, say, at the other end of the spectrum, somebody who's retired, somebody in their 60s, their equity allocation should not be more than 10-15%. And their fixed income can go up to about 50 to 60. Your gold can also go up to about 10 to 15, and alternate should be as low as 5%.
And then, ideally, for someone who's young, as part of the fixed income portfolio, you would say that there should be some exposure to the, say, a
Bonds,
bonds,
yes.
then,
So
right?
alternates, if I may. So basically, the way you think about alternates is that you've got different asset classes. You've got equity, debt, commodity, and alternates. In equity also, you can have traditional and then you can have alternate. So in equity, when you think of traditional, your stocks and mutual funds come there.
Right.
When you think of alternate, then your unlisted shares come there.
Right.
When you look at fixed income, then your traditional is your fixed deposits. And when you think of alternate, there come your corporate bonds.
Okay.
When you think of gold, physical gold could be a traditional play. But you think of ETF, you think of digital gold,
Right.
they come in the alternate and so on. So alternates are available for every risk profile.
Hmm.
And you should have some part of it irrespective of, whether you are a safe investor, then you can take a safe alternate. Why should you do alternate? So alternates essentially solve three purposes. First, they give you a kicker in your returns.
Hmm.
Second, they help you diversify.
Correct.
And third, they help you gain inflation beating returns. So these are the reasons why you should do it. But however, alternates also come with their own set of risks.
Right.
And there are three main risks that users should keep mind of. The first is liquidity risk. So alternates, unlike more traditional instruments, are not very prevalent in the market.
Mhm.
So you should be very careful that you invest keeping the time horizon of that particular instrument in mind. Like for example, if you think of bonds, bonds usually have a maturity of between 18 to 24 months. So you should be prepared to stay invested for that period if you are coming into this.
Right.
People invest in unlisted shares. So unlisted shares, you should be prepared to wait for, like any equity investment, 2 to 3 years if you're looking to invest in it. You should not think of it as trading. So liquidity is very important and you should know there is a liquidity risk. The second risk is market risk. Now, all these instruments operate exactly the same as your traditional. If the stock market goes down, your normal equities and mutual funds will go down. The same way your alternates also go down. You may have bought an unlisted share or you may have bought, some other instrument that is linked like a REIT. They all tend to go down in line with the market. So market risk is real. And the third risk is credit risk. So credit risk is when you do fixed income alternate, you essentially lend your money to a counterparty. It's like an FD. In FD, you lend money to a bank. In alternate, you lend money to a corporate.
Right.
Now, if something happens to the corporate, it defaults. In essence, your money is gone. So these are the three main risks that you should do. However, that being said, risk is not bad. In fact, risk is what helps you generate the return.
Correct.
But risk should be managed, risk should be understood, and you should know what you're getting into. So do alternates, but you should also do your homework.
Great. I think in terms of just understanding the risk return profiles, especially, I think one area which is a little confusing for retail investors and fixed deposits, you clearly know what is the rate of return you're going to get, and that doesn't change. But that's not the same in bonds, right? Because there would be a yield which fluctuates with the
Right.
market.
So if you hold the bond till maturity, then the yield that you invest in is what you will get at the end.
Hmm.
However, temporarily there could be fluctuations up and down.
Okay.
That is linked to the interest rate in the market.
Right.
So you may have heard now recently RBI has cut rates.
Hmm.
So when rates get cut, the prices increase. So if you are an existing bond holder, you will see temporary increase in your returns.
Okay.
However, if you sell at that time, you can lock in that returns. But most of the investors in bonds tend to hold to maturity.
Hmm.
So it really doesn't matter what fluctuation you see. What yield you invest in at the start is what you will get till the end.
So bonds can be traded freely, just like the stocks.
Theoretically, yes, they're all listed and they can be, bought and sold over the exchange. But unfortunately, there is very less liquidity. So unlike equity, say you
Mm.
buy a stock, you buy an Infosys. When you go to the your trading portal, you'll see a lot of buyers and sellers,
Right.
and very narrow. So you can sell also very easily. Unlike this, in when you search for a bond and you want to sell, you'll hardly find any buyers
Okay.
for what you sell. So that's one of the cons of investing in fixed income, especially corporate bonds, as of today.
Understood. So if someone has bought bonds through your platform, as an example, and um, wants to kind of sell it at a certain point of time, is that something that you could enable, or
Right. So we do enable that.
Okay.
Having known that this is a common challenge that investors face, we do offer liquidity at a cost to our
Okay.
investors.
Got it.
But at least they're able to get their money back.
That's nice. I think one of the other challenges is that, I think investors, and if I even look at myself, right, um, do we get the right kind of valuation for the bonds that we hold and the statements that we see, etc.? And how does that work? So if the interest rates are fluctuating,
Right.
what do we see in our valuations?
Okay. So when you talk about bond valuations, right? So it does fluctuate in the short term. So when you look at your monthly statements, you may get the latest mark to market, which is the price, current price of the bond, as per what is prevalent in the market. But most of the time, what a lot of platforms do is they price it to the yield at which you invested. So they don't really factor in the ups and downs of the valuation in the bond market.
And what kind of tips would you give investors when it comes to assessing risk, particularly on bonds, right? So we spoke about the ratings,
Right.
but then you said high risk, high
Right.
return as well. Do the investors also need to evaluate the companies, as much as they need to when they do equity
Yes.
investing?
Yeah. So when they look at risk in fixed income, I think the biggest risk is credit risk. And you need to know as much about the company when you do an equity investments. However, it's hard for investors to get the access to that kind of information. When you do equity investments, you do it in publicly listed companies. There's a lot of public information available. But in bonds, you may end up buying a lot of private bonds. So
Okay.
there may not be a lot of information, or you may have to go through annual reports to understand, which may not be everybody's skill set. That's where using a platform, for example, like Incred Money, where all the information is curated and given to you in a easy to consume format, makes a lot of difference.
Understood.
A lot of platforms also do some risk mitigation before they list a bond that is available to the investor. So, for example, the documentation before they list the bond, the term sheet, the clauses in it. Sometimes there's a promoter guarantee. Sometimes there is a collateral. All these help you in the times where if something goes bad.
Got it. But when we talk of corporate bonds, and there are bonds which are related to listed companies as well as unlisted companies. But I think you're also talking about listed bonds and unlisted.
Yeah,
Is the same
it's a
thing,
little
or
confusing.
yeah, I think.
So you can have private limited companies or public limited companies.
Mm-hmm.
You can have unlisted bonds or listed bonds. So it's like a 2x2. You can fit anywhere. So what we offer as an online bond platform is only listed bonds. These could be of public limited companies or these could be of private limited companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what's the difference? Sorry if I just ask you,
So
like,
when you
between a
get-
listed and an unlisted.
Right. So when you do a listing of a bond, it's usually also rated. So that is one of the criteria. The
Okay.
moment it is rated, it means there's a third party valuer who's evaluating it and giving a certain rating. The rating could be as high as a AAA, or it could also be BBB or even into C. For investors, the investor class category starts from BBB onwards.
Okay.
C and D is not for investors. It's not investable class. So one is that rating. Second, if it is listed, basically you go through a lot of compliance checks while doing that listing process. So automatically that means that you are a company of some standing and you kind of reduce the risk.
Got it.
Unlisted is a lot more riskier and should only be done by very high, net worth individuals who know what they're getting into. It's not a retail investment product.
Okay, so you're saying the unlisted bonds do not have the formal rating, credit rating
They
associated.
need not have it. But
They
if you
need-
do listing, then you have to have it.
Got it. Got it. So that's one great insight. When we talk of alternates, what else is out there? I think international investing seems to be catching up a lot.
Right, it's catching up. So when you speak about equities, the traditional equities are your stocks and mutual funds, the listed market. But the alternate is your unlisted market and international equities.
Okay.
So you could invest, being in India, you can invest in a Google or a Microsoft. These are some of the stocks that are available abroad. Why should you do it? I think the biggest reason you should do it is a lot of Indians, their entire assets are in rupees. You don't have any other currency exposure. And typically the Indian rupee tends to depreciate. So
Right.
if you look at it from a global context, you are in a way losing money. Especially now in a connected world, you tend to travel a lot more outside. You have kids who are going abroad for education. So a lot of your expenses tend to be in dollars, but your investments and income are all in rupees. So you need to diversify a little bit, have a bit of currency.
If you could also touch upon the tax implications on bonds in India,
Right.
could you just throw some light on that?
Yeah. So on bonds in India, until recently, you had a little advantage, but now the government has made all debt instruments very similar. So, for example, on fixed deposits or even on bonds, you are charged as per your income slab in the short term.
Okay.
So, bonds are taxed based on the kind of incomes that you get. In typical bond, you get it in two ways. One, you get the coupon, which is the periodic interest that you receive from the issuer. This is taxed at your marginal rate. So, based on your income slab. The other part of income that you get from bonds is the capital gains. You may have bought a 100 rupee par payable bond at 99. So in essence, you have made 1 rupee gains over the tenor of the bond. Now, if that tenor is more than 1 year, which is more than 12 months, then you are classified as long-term capital gains on that 1 rupee.
Okay.
And you are charged at the rate of 12.5%. And if it is less than 1 year, then you get charged again at your slab rate.
Okay. But how easy is it for a regular retail investor to kind of do all of this math or do
Right.
maths?
Again, it's not that easy. That's where again platforms like Incred Money come into play.
Okay.
And there are various other platforms that kind of help you with this, where all of this can be easily automated.
Okay.
Ultimately, they are just simple rules.
Okay.
You can devise an engine and set it up. And that's
Okay.
linked to your transaction. So you can just use that to file your taxes or give it to your CA.
Interesting. So basically, you will generate a report at the
That's
end
right.
of the year
That's
to show you the exact
That's it.
capital.
You can do it anytime. You can just download it off the platform.
Oh, fantastic. With you, with your years of experience in doing this, with Oro Wealth earlier and now at Incred Money, I'm sure you have access to a lot of data and information about what customers are doing on the platform. What would your guidance be to kind of offer someone advice in terms of how to navigate today's markets? Especially, I think it looks like things are going to remain volatile for some
Right.
time.
So, volatility essentially means that there will be a fluctuation in the kind of returns or in your investment amount. At heart, that's what it means. So, the best way to counter it is to have a balanced portfolio that can work under any scenario.
Right.
In essence, in simple practical terms, it means diversify. And that means buy different kinds of asset classes. It also means diversify across time. So, you hold assets that some are short term or long term. It also means diversification across liquidity. So you should have assets that you could liquidate very quickly versus having some assets that take some time, but they have their other pros in it. So having a very blended, balanced portfolio is very important. And I think the old adage that don't put all your eggs in one basket, it's exactly that. So the way to balance it out is that first you should have some amount of equity. Equity is for growth and for capital appreciation.
Right.
Then next you should have fixed income. Fixed income is for stability. It's for capital preservation.
Yeah.
The third is commodity and gold. In volatile terms, gold does very well because it's seen as a storehouse of value. It also helps you beat inflation. And last, you should have some alternates because while your core portfolio, which comprises of more traditional instruments, get you certain returns, if you want that little extra, you should do that alternates as well. Now, what percentage you do of each asset depends on your circumstance. It's very unique to you. If your profile is a little more conservative, have a lot more of fixed income and maybe gold. If your profile is aggressive, then you can have a lot more of equity.
Vijay, so with access to such vast amount of data and visibility into customer behavior on your platform, what guidance would you offer to someone navigating today's volatile markets?
Right. So actually, the funny thing is, even the customers are overloaded with information outside
I
the.
can imagine.
So
Yeah.
I think we keep telling this to all our clients. It's very important to not get overloaded with too much information and not get distracted by the noise. Personal finance investing is a very unique thing. There's a lot of peer comparison that happens, and then you get into something that doesn't suit you individually.
True.
So I think first you should understand yourself well. And when you invest, be disciplined and be consistent. I think that solves 80% of the problem. The rest comes in when you diversify your investments, and then you are able to pick opportunities when the market falls. You know that you have a little bit of capital, you can come in and take advantage of that. So seeing user behavior, and I think it's changed for the better over the last many years. Earlier, the moment market used to fall, people used to get very scared and take their money out. Now I'm seeing every fall is seen as an opportunity, which as long as the long-term growth of the country is in place, I think it is. So that's one of the better consumer behaviors that we have seen on the platform.
That's great. What would you want to say to some people who kind of, wait for the right time to invest or think they can buy at the bottom? Any piece of advice for these?
Um, See, it's very hard to predict, and having done this for many years, I still don't get it right. So it's again what you should do as an investor is you should win under any scenario. I think that's what you should plan for. Scenarios are, say, high growth, low growth, high inflation, low inflation. Broadly, you can divide every scenario into one of these. And how do you win? You need to diversify. So at some point of time, when it's low growth, your fixed income works. When it's high inflation, gold works. When it's high growth, equity works. So typically, you need to have a little bit of each in your portfolio. In fact, that's how you even construct a team, right? You have an aggressive batsman at the top, then you have someone who ticks things over, and then you have a late finisher. So having that is good. You can't run it with all 10 people ticking along. Neither can you have finishers right at the top. So you need to have a balanced portfolio, and maintaining that consistency is very important. I mean, even an activity that is very similar to this, that is like, taking care of your health. You make a lot of grand plans that you'll go and do this and that in the gym. All you need to do is show up.
Correct.
It doesn't matter. So being consistent and sticking to your plan is the most important
I
thing.
think that's a great way that you put it. And if I could ask you, like, in your own personal financial journey, right? One is, of course, like, what would be your 3 guiding principles, let's say, towards investing? And also, if you could maybe touch upon what you would have advised your 20-year-old self, perhaps, in terms of managing finances.
So from personal finance, I think the number one rule is uh, spend less than what you earn, live within your means, and invest how much ever you can.
Do you think that's changing in India? I think most of, like, India is generally known to be.
No, savings rate India has been falling. So
Yeah.
it used to be 30% plus. It's now near 10%. So it is falling. So I think first mantra is that you can't really enjoy, I mean, you can enjoy EMI filled fun, but then you have to pay for it later. In a sense, what you're doing is you're consuming tomorrow's income today,
Correct.
and there will be a tomorrow. So you have to be careful of that. So the first rule is spend as long as you're earning, or spend less than what you earn. So that should be the first rule. The second is diversify across asset classes, across geographies, across time horizons, across liquidity, which many people don't do. Always keep some amount ready for you. That's there. And one part that follows this is take care of your insurance. So get your health insurance in place. A lot of corporates do provide it, but often it's not enough. So definitely get a top up, a family floater for you and your family. And get a life insurance, get a term insurance for sure.
I think
Because-
that's so important. I think all the 3 things that you said are.
Yes, that's the most important thing. And the last one I think is be very true to yourself. I think every individual knows because no one is perfect. You have different habits. If I look at, say, assets, you may have made investments that are wrong. You may have bought a house that probably didn't turn out the way it is. You've probably taken a loan, a very high interest loan, and you're stuck with it. You probably are in maybe a job that doesn't fulfill your potential or get you a lot of income. You're probably not diversified your income sources. Or you have a spending bad habit. You probably are overspender, right? So in any one of these facets, it's important to first acknowledge that you have this problem, or that you've made these mistakes in the past, and everybody does it. But the smart ones are the ones who can recover from that. You should not do it again. So being honest and understanding it, and then slowly start working back towards it. I think that's the third mantra that I think that works.
Great. And what you would.
Oh, tell my 20-year self. So I think having been a lot more uh, wiser from the markets, I would say, I think that's a nice way of putting it. And something that I started after I entered the market, maybe I should have done it when I was very young into it, is journaling. I actually, I used to be a trader. So before Incred Money, I had started Oro Wealth, which was an investment platform, which also started when I looked at the theme that retail investors starting to invest now around 2015.
Okay.
But prior to that, I used to be a portfolio manager. I used to be a trader in the markets
Okay.
and did that for 5 years. And what I learned from that is people have a lot of behavior biases. And my biggest takeaway is that investing is not about finance. Investing is all about behavior. It's all about the psychology of the investor. So behavioral economics graduates form better traders than actual finance graduates. Another thing I would say is talk to a lot more people. When you're young, you are a lot more confident, maybe a little arrogant, and you tend to sometimes get it right, but more often than not, you'll get it wrong. So talk to a lot of people. And one of the biggest challenges that I see in the market is that people say this time it's different. That I know how to deal with it. It's different this time. But history has taught us that things repeat. The contours could change, but definitely there are surprises coming your way, and you'll never be able to guess that.
So in your young age, you have burnt your fingers. Should I did you reach that conclusion or?
Yeah. I mean, over time you do when you tend to lose money, especially in the stock market or when your investment goes bad. You should introspect, and that's how you become a better investor or better trader.
Yeah.
So it's
I think that's important. I think even in one of the earlier episodes we did with Mr. Nitin Rao, he said that it's important actually for young people to experience that as well to kind of harden
right.
them.
And I call it
Learn.
paying tuition fees. You pay fees to the college, right? And you learn. You don't. I mean, you're not taught stock market investing. You're not taught personal finance as well.
Correct.
So this is your fees that you pay. That's fine. I mean, everybody goes through their losses because once you start making money, usually you stop only when you've lost. It sounds very familiar, right? You don't leave until the house wins. So,
Yeah.
but knowing when to stop, and I think the greatest gift a person can have is knowing how to stop loss. How to cut your losses at the right time
Right.
is the toughest and the best skill that you have. If you can master this, you will never lose money in the long term.
Wise words.
Yeah.
That's going in the teaser. Okay. I think if I just to take away some of the things you said, I think for the new generation, definitely spend less on concert tickets. On the latest upgrade of the iPhone.
But at least spend less than what you earn. I think
Yeah, that's
that is the rule.
Vijay, are there any persistent myths or outdated beliefs that, around personal finance that you wish more people would let go of?
So I think one of the more prevalent myths is around fixed deposits and the fact that if you invest in fixed deposits, you're in the best place. What people don't realize is that fixed deposits uh, don't have such a high rate of return, especially your traditional big bank fixed deposits. As a result, what happens on a post-tax basis, you end up earning less than inflation. Now, what that means is that even if you invest here, you're worse off next year than where you are today. So I think that's one of the myths that people should be careful of. The second is regarding house ownership. Often I see people say that the moment you come into a little bit of money, put that as a down payment for a house. Now, if you think it's a great investment opportunity, fine. You should be clear, am I going to stay there? Then that's fine. But if it's investment, be very careful, do the math and see whether it works for you. Because it may have been true many years back, but today you have a lot of other options that can help you better. So renting is not just throwing off money. So that's something that you need to keep in. And the third is it's too early for me to think about financial planning. What can I do with this much money? Equity is not for me. I don't think any of those are right. You can start very small. Don't think too much about the quantum. Don't think too much about timing the market. Just start. Yourself after 10 or 15 years will thank you for that.
Fantastic. I think you've summarized it so beautifully. I think thank you for doing this episode with us, Vijay.
Thank you so much.